as an archer. No, he's too thin. I might miss him altogether.
Robin.
The very thing. 5 men-at-arms talking in a group. They'll break the fall beautifully. Goodbye, my lady.
Robin.
Yes? Then you do love me. Don't you? Don't you?
You know I do.
Well, that's different.
Oh, that's wonderful and very touching. So hi guys.
Hey.
This is our first like holy shit breaking news kind of thing, right? Like we had
fingers on the pulse.
Yeah,
Fingers on the pulse.
Exactly. This is relevant right now. So this morning we'd been debating as to like what we were going to talk about today, and we had Dan had some food misadventures this week. You all right, Danny?
Are you all right?
I mean, I'll have to be.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm sorry about all that. It's a mess.
Yeah, like I said, the thing that worries you is you don't know what's going to be in business in 3 months.
Exactly.
So before we step into the tragedy of this woman here pictured, who is Miss Olivia De Havilland, who passed away at the age of 104. 104 in
which,
in Paris.
Creepy enough, is the temperature in Chicago right now.
Daniel, are you telling the truth or are you cracking a joke?
I'm telling the truth. It's with the heat index, but you know.
Oh no.
It's like what they say about the wind chill. I don't need to know what it would be if the conditions were perfect. It's 104.
Oh.
So before we get into what, by the way, what is everybody drinking? You guys, I'm still on my cider kick. You know, I had pineapple cider last week and apple cider the previous week. Guava cider.
Oh, nice.
From Two Rivers Cider Brewery here in Sacramento. I do have to say, like, here in Sacramento, there's a lot of people mistake breweries for culture. And so we have a lot of breweries. And so this is instead of say art openings, I get a guava cider, which it's anyway.
I think that's sort of. Sorry, go ahead, Brass.
No, I'm just saying I'm for it. I don't give a crap. I love that stuff. I'm into it. Bless. And don't forget, in Colorado, weren't we like the home of the small brews?
Right.
We were like
that's true.
The home brew capital of the world in the 90s and 2000s. So
and also our former governor, soon to be senator, Hickenlooper, like made his fame with a brewery, right?
Yeah, Wynkoop.
Yeah, there we go. So, what are you guys drinking?
I'm drinking. This is one of my favorite, German breweries.
Eyinger.
Eyinger. They have a variety. This is their Hefeweizen. They also do a smoked beer, a Rausch beer, which is delicious. Delicious.
Fantastic.
The name of that beer too is like white beer. It's got everything you'd hope out of a German name.
Right.
Weisse. It's got an umlaut. It's got 2 S's.
Yeah.
And this is it's a Bavarian brewery too.
There you go.
So.
It's got the Bayern little checkered at the bottom.
Yep.
Very cool. Very cool.
That's Munich. That's Munich's flag.
Brassy, what you got?
I've got a lovely extra bold hot tea by Twinings because Olivia was a British dame. But I'm also going to throw just a whisper of that in there. I haven't yet because I'm still in breakfast mode, but I will be dipping in later. Just a touch.
Just a touch. So this amazing lady passed away this morning, 104 years old. When she was born, there were veterans of the Civil War just kind of stomping around, right?
Mm-hmm.
She she is one of those people, you know, I always marvel at connectors to the past and how like easy it is for us to touch like certain things. And here we have somebody who died at the age of 104, into her teens and 20s and 30s even. Veterans of the Civil War were dying out, but she was a direct connection to that. I think one of the more, like, she led an incredible life, and we can definitely talk about the life that she led, but also she made some amazing historic movies. And I think for me, like, a lot of my entry into history was through film. I think we discussed that the last time we did a film-based thing. And in particular, these Errol Flynn, Olivia De Havilland movies, like they were big. They were the action adventures of the time. They were their Indiana Jones. They were the Avengers. They were all of those things.
Right.
And people saw them and ate them up in the same way that we eat these things up now. And Olivia De Havilland is living to 104 years old. I mean, who is today's Olivia De Havilland? If we had to say, like, someone who was in all the, is it Scarlett Johansson? Is it what's her name? Pretty Woman. Julia Roberts, right? Like, who would be like the woman who was in all of those kind of movies all the time?
Can I say Meryl Streep? Is that too far? Is that too? Because I feel like maybe that's not the right tone.
Yeah, no.
She's just got a bit of. I mean, Olivia was young and fun and had, like, you know, that kind of spunky, I'm your girl vibe. But also, I see her as a very high class woman. I see her as a very refined woman. Yeah,
I think, but isn't that just kind of like a thing of the times? Like, don't we just see her as a refined woman?
I guess we weren't allowed to be anything else.
This is what old ladies dressed like back then, and we know that our old ladies are going to be, you know, in juicy sweatpants and like, you know, like.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to that. I'm not looking forward to explaining that to the next generations. I don't know. Who do you guys think?
I don't know. Like, I don't know if there's anything equal to it, but just
I don't. Yeah. I don't think. I don't know. I think maybe that moment of people like this in the movie business might have passed. Oh. Like, she was of her time, but that was a different Hollywood, right?
It was a different Hollywood. Yeah, it was, and so, it told different stories. One of the things I did want to do is, she was born in 1916. Her family was a diplomatic family. So her mom was French, her dad was British, and he was in the diplomatic service. Her mom was actually French English, and she was an actress. Because of the dad's work, they moved to Tokyo, where she was born. Olivia De Havilland,
right,
born in Tokyo in 1916. And here is some video.
During the height of the Great War.
Yeah, during the height. Well, yeah, during the height of the Great War.
The song, yeah.
Yeah.
Was in 1916.
So let's watch a little, like, footage of Tokyo at that time. I think just to give you an idea of, like, what she was born into, and like give you a touch of a completely different world. And by the way, the audio in this is added, and the film has been slowed down, kind of the same what do you call it, film thing that they did for They Shall Not Grow Old, which, if anybody has not seen They Shall Not Grow Old, the documentary, highly recommended. About World War I. They took footage, they colorized it, they added audio, and really made you feel like you were there in a way that super unique. But they used the same kind of technique here. They slowed it down and added some audio. And as you can see, like, it's a completely different world in Tokyo at this point in time. And to this was what Olivia De Havilland was born into. And I think that, you know, her mom her mom went to the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts. And I don't know if you guys I don't know if we've talked enough about the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts, but at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts, you basically, it's a green light to go on and do big things in show business in the UK. Like,
right.
Every major UK actor, like, if you ever think of a British leading man, any British leading man, they played Hamlet at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts and were taught by the previous generation, right? So we're talking about, you know, like, there's almost a direct line from, like, Claude Rains, who we talked about a few weeks ago, who was in the movie about the founding father, Haym Salomon. Claude Rains taught John Gielgud, taught Kenneth Branagh, taught Benedict Cumberbatch, right? Like it's literally, sorry? Patrick Stewart, right? Like all of these guys all played Hamlet and all got taught by the people like previous to them. And so Olivia de Havilland's mom was an actress in her own right, a performer in her own right, and she gave up that career and moved with the diplomatic service to Tokyo to be part of this relationship with her dad, with Olivia de Havilland's dad. And from what understood, like he basically he was never faithful, and the marriage was unhappy, and eventually they moved away from Tokyo, and were going to go back to the UK, to England, but they had to stop in San Francisco because the kids got sick on the voyage back and never left, left California.
I know the.
You come here, you never leave.
Sometimes, yeah.
You know, you're just kind of like, oh, it's so nice here. It's so nice. Just gonna, and I mean, she went to Los Gatos High School, which is a school that my cousins went to. Like, it's a whole to do. So she is like, yes, she is a French and British, civil servant, sort of, ambassador class, and actors, and all of this fancy hoity-toity stuff, which is really what we see with that picture of her as a grand dame here, sitting with her Japanese screen in the background and that perfect helmet head. But really, she's a California girl, which I love. I love because it means that here in California, you can become what you should be. And I think that Olivia de Havilland is a perfect example of somebody who should have been. You called her dame, and I don't know that she was knighted. She was.
That energy.
Yeah. No. She was a Order of the British Empire, right? Purely because she was born to the diplomatic service abroad. She was always a British citizen. But if she had been born in the U.S., she would not have been. Steven Spielberg cannot be called Sir Stephen. The title dame and sir only applies to people who are born in the UK. And so you're right, she is a dame, but I don't know that she could have become a dame in the way that she did if she hadn't spent that moment in California and become the mega star that she was. So anyway, just kind of a cool character, and just like, I don't know if it's because she lived to be 104 years old, or she was always this awesome. It strikes me as she was kind of always this awesome.
Oh, yeah. Her fan, according to the fan base outcry, it was like, I've always been hearing people shouting her out.
Yeah.
People always quote her or say she's my hero, she's an icon.
Yeah, yeah. And she is. She really is. So I wanted to talk about her historical films. Like I wanted to kind of give. I know we've given her like a little bit of an intro here. And Brass, you can speak to like the fights that she had and how she was always like she had men throwing themselves at her in a time and age where the casting couch and treatment of women was horrible.
Yeah, it's like historically bad right now. Historically bad.
Yeah.
At the moment when she was trying to thrive in the industry. But we'll get into her as the timeline progresses throughout. We'll get into her court cases.
Okay.
This lady had a pit bull jaw. She did not let go until court was over, and she often won.
That's awesome. So I wanted to do this kind of in chronological order of historical bullshit. Because one thing that Olivia De Havilland wasn't, she was not somebody who did many historically faithful movies. And we know that there's a lot of room to play around in movies, but she was in some particularly historically bullshitty movies. And I think that like a lot of the films that she and Errol Flynn starred in. By the way, Errol Flynn, man, whew, such a badass. Fan, Brassy?
Yeah, fan.
Yeah.
And it's almost disturbs me when I thirst after people that are passed away. But Errol Flynn has my complete attention.
Yeah, so let's watch a little bit of here in historical bullshit chronological order. Let's start with one of the granddaddies of historical bullshit, which is, of course, Robin Hood. So here, we're going to watch this clip about, this is the...
When history hung on the flight of an arrow or the slash of a sword, when feudal barons ravaged the countryside to live in pomp and splendor, when one man alone dared challenge the might of his country's oppressors, Robin Hood, outlaw of Sherwood Forest and his stalwart band, robbing the rich to feed the poor, ready to fight for king, for country, or for maiden fair.
Now, this forest is wide. It can shelter and clothe and feed a band of good determined men, good swordsmen, good archers, good fighters. Are you with me?
Yeah, we're with you, man. Like, yeah, Robin Hood, right? And not just Robin Hood, The Adventures of Robin Hood, Errol Flynn, and Olivia De Havilland. I mean, this is what we picture as the quintessential Robin Hood, right? Like that little pointy hat with the green and the green tights and all of that stuff. Like we to this day consider that Robin Hood, and that started with Douglas Fairbanks. But really, I think this movie is the quintessential Robin Hood, and I believe it was Basil Rathbone who plays the bad guy in this. And also, you know, speaking of Claude Rains, is also in The Adventures of Robin Hood as Prince John. Yeah, so this movie, I think, it really encapsulates like the idea of like what we wanted out of Robin Hood. And it's interesting to me that this story, I mean, historically speaking, they're all over the place, right? They add new characters to it. I don't think the Sheriff of Nottingham is in it. I think that there's like a lot of I think there's like random lords. It's very weird. But from a historic perspective, it's totally off and completely all over the place, with the possible exception of vilifying Prince John. There's only one Robin Hood movie that doesn't do that, and we'll get into that in just a second. But I do want to take a moment to talk about the historic Robin Hood, which is really kind of a weird thing. One of the things that I've noticed about Olivia De Havilland's historical movies is that literally none of them, like all of them, work in the world of historic nuance and historic hearsay. None of them work in the world of like hard history, right? So literally, like, who was Robin Hood? Dan, do you know anything about the actual historical Robin Hood?
I always thought Robin Hood was was sort of a conglomeration of a variety of people and legends, and like there might have been a Robin of Locksley, but not in the same. It's a historic, yeah. It's a bunch of legends put together.
Yeah, but you know what? So I'm going to put on my communist hat here, and say that Robin of Locksley and the Adventures of Robin Hood was redistribution of wealth before redistribution of wealth was a thing. And the idea that you rob from the rich to feed the poor, rob from the rich to feed the poor. I think that story and the ability to vilify poor leadership, and overtaxation, it carried some weight, and it carried, and I think the fact that from a historical point of view, it's tied to the story of John, of King John, who was terrible, and had the Magna Carta forced on him, right? So you take someone that historically everyone agrees is terrible, and then you go he made things so bad that we had to rob from the rich to feed the poor, and we created this folk hero around it. I think that story really resonates, and it resonates so hardcore that we made movies around it for a long, long time. So yeah, but let me just read a little bit of historic Robin Hood, or pretend historic Robin Hood. Basically, it's a bunch of ballads, it's a bunch of songs, in very much the same way that the character of Falstaff is sort of a made up character that wanders through history. Robin Hood is very much the same thing. There's a couple of stories about a human named Robert Hod of York.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking. I knew there was somebody that was vaguely of the story that actually did exist.
Yeah, well there's actually 4 people who potentially there's one that's like a guy who lived in the period of time that makes sense, and he was they took his 32 shillings that he had amassed as his wealth as a human. 32 shillings and 6 pence were confiscated, so he's forced to become an outlaw. And then there's also stories of the Daville brothers, who were also barons and nobles, who also had to deal with how bad Prince John was. There's an idea of a historical outlaw named Roger Godbert, who was a diehard supporter of Simon de Montfort, who was a big player in the 1260s. There's a lot of people that you can claim are Robin Hood. But really, there's no actual historical person, and there's no way of really knowing who that person might be. And then, of course, can you guys see this image that I just popped up?
Yep, I can.
It's a little dark, but basically, the story of Robin Hood, as we know it, as kind of we feel it, didn't really come around until James II, which is the Restoration, which is again think about it. You're bringing back the Stuarts. You're bringing back the Stuarts after beheading them. You want a story about the excesses of royalty, right? And robbing from the rich to feed the poor. And so you bring back the story of Robin Hood and perform it as plays and kind of give it a little bit of a revival. And I do think that how ingrained is this story in our society? How many versions of Robin Hood have existed?
Right.
Here's
how dare you? Yeah. No, but I'm glad you did this. But I'm almost put off by the trope of the aiming, the archery. I'm almost put off by that
right
now.
I mean,
all together.
I almost feel like the archery part is sort of the most like inconsequential part of Robin Hood.
You say that, but sir, I lived in Whitby, England. Or you're well aware of that, I know. But the Sherwood Forest is right south of Whitby.
Oh shit, we lost Dan.
Oh,
It's all right. He'll be back on.
okay. The right south of Whitby is the Sherwood Forest, and I thought I was really touching some historical pay dirt here by looking around Sherwood Forest. I felt, oh, I'm in it. Wow. Turns out, I did a little scrolling around here. It said that the actual Robin Hood Forest is not Sherwood. It's down in South Yorkshire.
Yeah, York. Yeah.
And then to make matters worse about your archery, there's a well-known story of two brothers that were super skilled archers, two brothers. And from the roof of the Whitby Monastery, they both shot an arrow. The arrows landed over a mile away. And one,
man.
yeah.
And I mean, the archery means like little to us, but like archery and the longbow in the UK, right? It's historic. The longbow kept England safe and won the war against the French in Henry V and in Agincourt. So
it's as important to us as the Winchester rifle in America.
There you go.
So where those two arrows landed, they named one Robin Hood Close and the other one is St. John's Close. Those meadows
Got it.
are named after these two brothers. So archery is vital to some parts of this story culturally, but it's still completely historically inaccurate.
So what are our favorite Robin Hoods? I mean, so like let's just talk about the.
Hold on.
Oh, what?
Back to the archery.
Yeah.
Because don't you think the archery might have to play into like English heritage in general?
That's what we were saying.
The English. Is that what
I find it culturally as important. I said to him, and I'm very proud of myself, Dan, that the longbow is as important to this culture as the Winchester rifle in America. It's a key.
Right. Okay, yeah.
You could take it out of the story and still have the story, but the fact it's there sets apart. It bookmarks a new part of an era.
Right. Okay. Cool.
Oh,
yeah.
God.
Exactly.
Yeah, I knew we were going to see this today.
I mean, look, this movie, I think we were all in high school.
Yes.
When this movie came out.
Because I had to do this show for marching band. And why did they have the snare drummers doing crap like this with their sticks?
So not only that, but the song with Bryan Adams, and I think the most important part of so there were a few important things about this specific Robin Hood portrayal, other than this incredible song.
And his buns, he had naked behind him.
Right, he was naked in this, but also the greatest sheriff of Nottingham.
Oh my God.
Right, like, and that's of course Alan Rickman, aka Severus Snape, aka always
Hans Gruber.
Listen,
Alan Rickman forever.
And particularly in this movie, like, I mean, you guys remember when he would throw his fits and he's like, I will eat his heart with a spoon, or like Council Christmas, right? And that Alan Rickman
baritone. Yeah. Oh, I was.
Right? Like that kind of thing. He was such a good sheriff of Nottingham. And they did those attempts at sort of talking about like King Richard and the Crusade. They attempted to do some real like that's why they brought Morgan Freeman into this movie. That's why, there's a whole bunch of stuff that they tried to pull off with this movie. And honestly, like, it beckoned to us. Like, this is the last time that a Robin Hood movie was actually successful. Every time they've tried to remake it since then, it's kind of failed.
Too much. They're oversaturated.
Yeah, but I do think that it does speak to the potency of the story, that they insist on trying to on trying to like remake Robin Hood every so often, right? Deep in our hearts, we know that a Robin Hood story will arise and it will once again hit, and so every so often we see a movie, a TV series, something to give it a go. So yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we shouted out this version of Robin Hood.
Love you, Alan.
Yeah, and also because from a historic standpoint, they finally got the costumes right? It wasn't like the little pointy hat and right. It wasn't the
it looked like a church square.
Yeah, I feel like it was a little bit closer to what the real Robin Hood is. But of course, there will only ever be one Robin Hood that transcends time, and that's I'm joking. I'm kidding.
Right. It's the best one.
It's a pretty damn good one, and we're talking about the Disney Robin Hood. It's so darn good. It's so darn good, and right, and I do want to say, I feel that the reason that this is it's such a successful version of Robin Hood is because it actually stays true and closer to the Adventures of Robin Hood, starring Errol Flynn and Olivia De Havilland. And I just feel like the more you stray from the pointy hat and the archery and the kind of fun part of it, and sort of try to justify it from a historical standpoint, the further away you get from it. And I think that's why a lot of the what's his name, Jack Aubrey, Australian actor,
Russell Crowe.
Russell Crowe, right? Why the Russell Crowe version of this kind of failed is because, frankly, we want to see tights and a pointy hat like Carrie Elwes here in Men in Tights, and in Robin Hood, and in Errol Flynn.
Well, look at I was, maybe you guys, when I was off, it came up, but not one of my personal favorites. Some people seem to like him, but taking Robin Hood and being like, let's make a superhero Robin Hood, right? With Green Arrow.
Oh, right.
Right? He's got the whole pointy hat.
He does, and he redistributes wealth, and he's super lefty.
Yeah, he's Robin Hood.
Yeah, yeah, and he's rich, and he robs from the rich to feed the poor. That's a good, Green Arrow. And Green Arrow is a TV show on the WB or whatever that is now.
Right.
And popular. I don't know. I don't watch, but yes. Yeah, no, you're totally spot on. So so I think what's amazing here, and what brings us back to Olivia De Havilland, and her mark on how we perceive history, is that this story, she did such a good job with the story of Robin Hood and Maid Marian when she and Errol Flynn did it, that it kind of messed us up for what we expect out of Robin Hood and out of this story, which was a redistribution of wealth during the time, and an admonishment of those in power. And basically, we now demand a lot of fun, a lot of romance, and a lot of excitement in our redistribution of wealth stories. Olivia De Havilland, awesome lady, awesome performance, and also everybody, this story, The Adventures of Robin Hood, it's available on TCM, it's available on YouTube, it's available everywhere. You can see this version of Robin Hood and wake up on a Saturday morning, pour yourself a mimosa, make yourself some eggs, sit down and fucking watch this. It's an absolute joy. You'll be just especially because it's been colorized, so the colors, you're just the colors are so intense. You're just it's incredible. It's incredible. Highly recommend it. Take a moment, watch it in honor of the passing of this great dame. So let's keep moving to what I think is this is one of my favorite movies ever, and it has Olivia De Havilland and Errol Flynn, and you're gonna at the end of this we're gonna see a clip of Olivia De Havilland talking about Errol Flynn, and she references this movie, but I want you guys to take a deep breath and check out The Charge of the Light Brigade. This is the preview. This is the trailer.
Wow, what a shot!
Yeah, there's something about these shots that I'll tell you guys
The
in
Light
just a
Brigade
second.
rides again, and a glorious story lives again, sweeping you across thousands of miles of Asia, from the battlefield of Balaclava to the historic Khyber Pass. From desert revolts by fierce Surastani tribesmen to palaces of
Right,
Oriental
Afghanistan.
splendor, where great nations vie for power
Like,
within
this
trade
is
and here amid the pageantry and mystery of India.
pageantry
Woven
and
the story of two
mystery.
brothers in love
Look at
with the
these
same
two.
woman, and the
Look at these
kissers
two.
that turned the tide of empire.
You're the only thing.
What'd you
that's
say,
really
Brass?
here. All I know is that I'm holding you in my arms tonight. You're so lovely.
It's absolutely beautiful, the both of them.
Yeah, and so this is The Charge of the Light Brigade, and I think it's a super. The movie is incredibly romantic, and it's also incredibly fun. It has some of the biggest battle scenes you will ever see on film. Like, it is intense in how like complete it is, as far as a movie about like when you look at like a recreation of a famous battle, like this one is pretty like spectacular.
The
Also,
assistant director won an Oscar for that.
for Charge of the Light Brigade,
Won an Oscar. Yeah,
there you go.
probably all their horses. You know.
What'd you say?
Well, the fact that they got anytime you're directing horses in battle. What did you think I said?
No, you're nudging up against one of the most horrifying things about this movie.
Oh Christ! I'll stop. Go ahead. You go. Oh no! Is it about the horse?
Yes, this was the movie that forced Hollywood to stop using tripwires on horses.
Okay.
So many horses died as a result of this movie that Hollywood had to stop using tripwires.
I'm fine with that. I'll settle myself later off camera, but okay. It's a historical moment. You'll never see that again.
You will never see that again. After that moment, can you imagine the carnage? It's not like what year was this movie? I totally
36. 1936.
Right, 1936. So pre-World War II. So 1936, not a time when you think, oh, animal rights. Right?
No,
you don't think 1936. People treated animals really well. Like I think the relationship of man to animal at that time was like horses to the glue factory, and the dog catcher as sort of like a comical character that brings dogs in by holding up a bone. But that's about it. So you can imagine what the carnage must have been like in order for like all of the Hollywood studios to get together and say, we're not going to use tripwires anymore. So that's the film Charge of the Light Brigade, and the movie itself kind of bounces around. It basically follows the story of two brothers who are soldiers in the British Army, and they're part of a made-up battle in India, and then they end up at the Crimean War as well, and one of them gets suicidal and makes the Charge of the Light Brigade happen. Dan, do you want to tell us like what the Charge of the Light Brigade like actually was, like from a historical standpoint?
Yeah, it was one of the worst disasters in history. So
wow.
the Light Brigade was a light cavalry regiment. So they had small arms, their swords. I don't think they had really any support, like heavy weapon support behind them, and they weren't like heavy cavalry, which I don't know all the differences between them all.
Yeah.
But these were like your raiders, like attack and retreat.
Yep.
Like they were to annoy and like wear down the enemy. They weren't really supposed to be. The heavy cavalry is who would do the heavy charge. These guys were like raiders that would come in from the sides and pick people off. But they got put into this charge was it the Battle of Balaclava?
It was.
I can't remember. Yeah, and they got it. It was basically shuttled into, as I understand it, into like a valley. It's very rocky on the Crimea during the Crimean War. There were 700 or so, right?
Yeah.
And they got shuttled into this valley, and then it was just a shooting gallery for cannons. I don't even think that the defenders had to rely on their rifles. It was all done by. It was very gory, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was, and so it was all made famous by Alfred Lord Tennyson.
Right. Great poem.
Yeah.
Beautiful poem.
Yeah.
But they refer to the Valley of Death a few times in that, don't they?
Yeah, and so the and I think it's worth noting, right? So this was a major issue, like a historical issue with the British Empire, is that they couldn't process loss, like they couldn't process losing. And so what they would do is they would hyper romanticize their errors and their losses in a way that that made everybody go like, oh, well, it was a noble thing. All right, you guys, the charge of the Light Brigade is one of the most famous historical military disasters. They sent a bunch of men in a valley. Literally, let me read you guys part of this, part of the poem, because I think it's worth noting. If I can find it, Charge of the Light Brigade poem. Here we go. This is from the poem. Cannon to the right of them, cannon to the left of them, cannon in the front of them, volleyed and thundered. Stormed at with shot and shell, boldly they rode and well into the jaws of death, into the mouth of hell rode the 600. And this poem, it's like we said, it's a great poem, but literally they've got cannons shooting down on these light cavalry, and you guys look at the hussar here with the red pants, the cherry bottoms. It was the Light Brigades were also the fanciest of some of the British cavalry regiments, and so the fact that we send our prettiest soldiers in and they get torn to pieces by cannons, and then our national poet laureate Lord Tennyson writes a poem about it, and it's published the next day, right? So literally everyone's like, oh, "Did you hear about the Light Brigade in Balaclava?" And then immediately afterwards, you get this poem, and the time between historic disaster, like total shellacking, and national martyrs and heroes is like tiny. And the movie that we see here with Olivia De Havilland and Errol Flynn is in fact a retelling of not the historic mess that it was, because it was a mess. People didn't get messages to each other on time. Generals kind of sat from afar watching, going, "Oh, is that the Light Brigade? Oh, they do seem to be marching into the Valley of Death." And then just watching people get slaughtered. The general, the French general who watched the whole thing happen, said very famously, "C'est magnifique, mais c'est pas la guerre." it's magnificent, but that's not war.
Oh.
And sure enough, like it was a desperate, futile charge. It was the slaughtering of people wholesale, for
Right.
no strategic gain, no nothing. Ultimately, like that moment didn't decide anything for anyone.
Two things. One thing that's I'm reading right now that's interesting is that initially it was supposed to be the heavy cavalry supported by the light cavalry for the charge, but they pulled the heavy cavalry and just sent the light cavalry. But mathematicians have done, I don't know how they do it, but it looks like if they had sent the heavy brigade in first, that it would have been one of the most successful battles in British history. That they would have won the whole thing, which is, I don't know how they did that. I'm just reading that right now. But what I want to talk about more important is this getting rid of the commanders of World War I were brought up on this story and this sort of mindset. And that to me leads directly into the continued slaughter of, like, they just couldn't see it. Right?
Yeah. Yep.
Because they were brought up as little boys and in their military careers on this is how you do this.
I mean, Haig, Field Marshal Haig, I think was a Crimean War veteran.
Was he?
I think
He
so.
would have been very young, yeah.
Yeah. So the Crimean War was really actually pretty gruesome and pretty difficult for the British, because this was the height of British fancy war. And I think this is I think it's called The Last Call or The Roll Call. And this is a really famous painting. Oh gosh, I'm so embarrassed. The woman painter, which is also super important. It created a frenzy when it was shown in the UK. But it's literally soldiers in their furry bear hats and in their really fancy clothes, looking pretty beat up because they're having to fight in this frozen wasteland of the Crimea, which, by the way, we know that Crimea is kind of a hotspot and kind of a mess, because we know that. Yeah, what's up?
Elizabeth Thompson is the artist of The Last Roll Call. Elizabeth Thompson.
Thank you. Yeah, and the whole story around her is pretty impressive. Like she deserves like time of her own.
She specialized in British military battles paintings. Yeah, that was her specialty.
But they robbed her of a lot of honors because she was a woman. Everybody loved this. Everybody like flocked to see this. This painting here was like the number one hit of the season, right? And they took her fame away from her because she was a woman. But anyway, but as you can see, this war was really like kind of a mess. And Florence Nightingale came out of this, and this was kind of kind of the.
It definitely deserves a show. It is a fascinating war that we don't talk about at all in the United States.
No, we don't. But it really set, and this is actually the Crimean War as seen from the Russian side, which I think is pretty amazing. Because the fight was the British and the French versus the Ottomans and the Russians. And I think the Italians jumped in there, but this was the first time we see kind of a partnership with the British and the French. The Tente Cordiale anyway, so what I'm trying to say here is that Olivia De Havilland's portrayal and role.
No.
Oh, go ahead.
The Turks fought with the English and the French because the Russians were going to take over the Orthodox churches and shrines, and the English and French were worried that it would decline the balance of power in the East because the Russians would have easily taken out the Turkish Empire, the Ottomans. Yes. Okay. Sorry. Going on.
No. Thank you for that. Those clarifications obviously are super important for us, and we need to definitely like give them their due. So anyway, Charge of the Light Brigade. Amazing movie, also readily available on all sorts of things. Turner Classic Movies, which I feel like we've given TCM more shout outs on this show than anything else. But definitely tune in and just know that what you're watching when you watch Charge of the Light Brigade here is not anything historical, with the possible exception of the fact that a lot of horses died.
Well, and
I think it's also worth mentioning that to stay totally historically inaccurate, you're going to see a lot of white people pretending to play Indians.
Yes.
Just a quick glance down the IMDb trail is like, oh.
Exactly.
Let's bear that in mind. Let's have an open conversation about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that basically brings us to, I think, Olivia De Havilland's most famous historical bullshit movie.
Right. Yeah.
And that would be, that's not it. Did I mess this up? Did I not upload? Yeah, we don't necessarily need to see it.
I can rip down my curtains and wear them as a clue.
Yeah, I mean, it's of course Gone with the Wind, right? And I think Gone with the Wind, it's very in style right now.
Is this antebellum period? Would you call this?
Yeah. So
yes.
Gone with the Wind.
It's like the high points of antebellum.
Yeah, here we go. Here's the music. Right? Yankees here in terror, right? It has so many important moments, cinematic moments. The movie itself it's magnificent. I don't know if there's a better way to describe it. It is a magnificent film. It has. Dan, what are you going to say? I feel.
No, I was going to say it's as a movie, it's just about as perfect as you can get. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just about even today, not any of the subject matter, but as a movie, it still holds up. It doesn't feel cheesy like the production. It's a great movie.
Yeah, so it's such a complicated subject, and it is such a complicated legacy. But I do want to say that Gone with the Wind, the book, and the movie are the apex of the cult of the lost cause. And I do feel like it bears noting that all of the folks who were into trying to romanticize the garbage, the trash humans that believed in slavery and in the bondage of other humans, used this film and the book that it was based on as basically the banner on which they pinned their hopes and dreams to try and resuscitate the garbage society and the garbage humans that made that world. And in the same way that I can watch Charge of the Light Brigade and watch Robin Hood and know in the back of my head that this is fiction, and it is trashy fun fiction that has nothing to do with the reality of humans being slaughtered in Balaclava, or the redistribution of wealth, or the treatment of peasants in England under oppressive kings like John. I can look at Gone with the Wind, and I can look at the performances by, I mean, damn, dude, everybody, Hattie McDaniel, Clark Gable, Olivia De Havilland, and Vivien Leigh, and look at all of these performances and say, damn, dude, those are incredible performances. And Hattie McDaniel won the Academy Award for this, right?
He did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Postscript, not allowed to go on stage to collect it. Postscript, they gave her a little like green room, threw a little flower with a vase in it, and put a table on it, and then they gave her prepared thank you
Selznick
remarks to
International
say to the
Pictures.
camera, and she did not say that. She went off. She said her own thing to the camera and took her thing and ran.
Yeah.
Patty Daniel, a real one.
Yeah, a real one. And I think it speaks to like what like ultimately like what a trash world and a trash like legacy.
Yeah.
But here's Olivia De Havilland in that again, and again, like we see this incredibly talented woman who made a name for herself in the romanticizing of history, in a way that was elegant and beautiful and unique, and also like feisty, and she held her place in all of these films, and not for nothing, right? Like she was an Academy Award winner,
2 times,
2-time Academy Award winner, and I think it's just one of these situations where, if you are honest with yourself about the history of humanity, you have to accept that we live with duality.
Mm-hmm.
That there's no I don't remember who it was, but some comedian did a whole bit about Hitler and his dog, and how in these home movies, you see Hitler playing with his dog Wolfie, and he's playing like a normal human plays with a dog.
Norm Macdonald did it.
There you go. And how sort of disturbing it is, because it's easier for us to put things into a single track, to say this is monstrous, this is not. But the truth is that history is complex. We as people are complex. We are capable of complicated lives that become segmented, that become that work within a variety of our emotional capabilities. And I do think that in the same room that there is room to acknowledge how trashy and awful and how far back a movie like Gone with the Wind set us. I think that Gone with the Wind supersedes things like Triumph of the Will or Birth of a Nation.
Yeah.
Because both of those movies were strict propaganda.
Right.
And you can say what you want about Birth of a Nation as not being propaganda. I would disagree. I think that Gone with the Wind skirts around it a little bit more. And you look at, we were raised in a world that skirted around issues of race. And so I do feel like Gone with the Wind artistry can be appreciated in a way that we can be mindful of the damage it did, but also like be in awe of performances like Olivia De Havilland's and Hattie McDaniel's in them. And I don't know, man. Like it's a tough situation to be in, because we have these sort of attachments to things that we know we need to let go of. And I think that as a country, we have an attachment to Gone with the Wind that deserves a little bit. We need to take it down a notch, but we also need to accept that it is a grand film.
I think it's an important film. Well, I mean, all three of those that you mentioned are important for their various reasons. But Gone with the Wind is important because, like on a multi-level thing, because Gone with the Wind itself is a piece of history that discusses another piece of history.
Oh, meta.
Right. Perfect.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, but I would say all historical films are a piece of history that discusses another.
Right. Because all historical films are about, like all historical movies, like, right. War and Peace is not about the War of 1812. It's about Russia in the 1860s.
Right.
Right. Like Gone with the Wind, like they're all products of their time. So they're all the good literature, film, and art is about its time as well as being about right? It's not used for it's not for Gone with the Wind is important not to learn about the antebellum South. It's about learning about how Americans in the middle of the 20th century viewed the antebellum South.
Yep.
Key.
Yep.
See?
And I think that leads to like a lot of the issues that we do see like now around romanticizing things that don't need to be romanticized. Just flat out, we don't need these statues of Robert E. Lee. We don't need all of the things that are out there right now. We have Gone with the Wind. Let that be our embarrassing statue. Really, like I'd rather something that Hattie McDaniel won the Academy Award for be our embarrassing statue than an actual freaking embarrassing statue.
Yeah.
You can choose to watch it. You can choose to press play. You can have Leonard Maltin explaining, giving us a little intro, going like, yes, this is. Have you guys watched any of the old Disney movies on Disney Plus and how they say like some of them have a disclaimer at the top that says may have some outdated historical takes.
That's good. That's
Right.
responsible.
I think so too. And some of them, like they have like a couple of disclaimers. One is may have outdated historical portrayals, and another one says may have outdated views on smoking.
I love it that we're still mad at cigarettes. Anyway, the may have, is that really how they word it? May have? Or do they say this does contain?
Oh, I don't know. I'm just, yeah.
I just wonder how gentle they are. I remember seeing that first as a disclaimer before a Bugs Bunny cartoon.
Yeah.
Where Bugs Bunny pretends to be Japanese. Whoops.
Yep.
Awful.
Yeah.
But by denying that and vaulting that doesn't do anybody any good. Let's live in that embarrassment and work off of that.
Exactly. And there's a difference between cartoons. It's not like those cartoons are in rotation. It's not like we keep like putting these things on and reinforcing that. Those cartoons have been taken out of rotation.
Yeah.
We've acknowledged like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
In the same way that Disney is now getting rid of Gone with the Wind and Song of the South. Can somebody check out the dates on both of those? Let's see. Gone with the Wind.
I think 1946 was Song of the South.
Really?
1939 was Gone with the Wind because that was the big year. You had Wizard of Oz. It was one of the best years in history.
Yeah.
Oh, God. 1946 is a lot more recent than I thought it was going to be.
What, Song of the South?
I thought Song of the South was like 20s. It's
No, man.
not.
Well, you got to realize that Walt Disney, he talk about romanticizing your childhood. Like in the same way that we think, like we look back at the 80s and we're like, yeah. Walt Disney looked back at the turn of the century and was like, yeah, like, all right, Thomas Edison, like that kind of, yeah. Like seriously, like that's what Main Street USA.
Wow. Like
who's Main Street? Like what? Why did we decide that period of time, that at the turn of the century, Main Street was Main Street USA? It just has to do with Walt Disney's childhood. It doesn't have to do with like the best time in America.
And
right?
Fort Collins, Colorado.
Hey?
Is that what it's based
Fort
on?
Collins, Colorado is one of the models for Main Street USA in Disneyland.
Will you look at that?
No?
So Disneyland, like Main Street USA is a good example of how the turn of the century was viewed by people in their 40s and 50s, who had grown up at that time. They were romanticizing that time, right? You soda jerk and like all of those things.
Yeah, I mean,
would you like a
look how like romantic, like when you go on Main Street USA, it is romantic and sweet and nostalgic. Right, even for those of us that never ever experienced an America that was even remotely like that. But I can't imagine, I guess, the people in their 40s and 50s at that time, like going through World War II and the Great Depression. The nostalgia was real to them. Like they felt it for real. Like the soda jerk, right? in the
Yeah,
candy
like
shop
all
and the
of that-
cigar
all of
guy.
that stuff, the pharmacy and
One of the best.
the ice cream parlor.
Something Wicked This Way Comes.
Steven,
Something Wicked This Way Comes.
what is that?
Right? Has the best. It's
The
a movie
movie?
from the 80s by Ray
Oh, I
Bradbury.
love that movie.
Yes.
What a
It's one of the best downtowns ever. Look at it.
All
It's
right.
amazing.
Anyway, but Olivia De Havilland basically made a career out of sort of muddling history and really painting it through the lens of the moment. I think that like the romantic versions of medieval England, the romantic versions of the Charge of the Light Brigade, the romantic versions of the antebellum South, I think all of those things she was of an era that truly made us wish, or made us believe that things were more simple. And I think when people hearken back to, they're just like, why can't things be like they used to be, right? Like this whole idea of make America great. I think anyone who understands history and understands reality knows that nothing has ever been great. Literally nothing, much less America. And so there's perceptions of greatness based on houses of cards that we built at random moments, but all of those things are very, very tenuous. And Olivia De Havilland's career spanned all of that and gave us insight and gave us a little bit of a point of view into how we evolved in our understanding of history. And I do want to point out one more important Olivia De Havilland thing. So Brassy brought this up before the whole thing, but this is Olivia De Havilland in the ABC, I think it was, miniseries North and South, which is an epic miniseries of the 80s about the Civil War. And it was a little bit closer to the realities of the Civil War. They discussed a lot of things. There were Black characters who were complex. There were a lot of famous folks. I think most famously, we'll do a whole thing, I think, on North and South. But Johnny Cash played John Brown. It is a whole to-do. It has all sorts of stars, but here's Olivia De Havilland playing a nurse in a Union infirmary during the Civil War. Even into her later years, she was still active and still playing these historical roles. So yeah.
bless her.
Dan, did you have something you wanted to say about?
Oh, just about the North and South. If we discuss it, we should discuss. It's based off a series of books by John Jakes, who also wrote the amazing American Bicentennial 12-part series about, I'm blanking on the name of the family. It starts in Europe in the 1700s and goes through basically today. It's 12 series of 400 to 500 page books. It's insane. But he also wrote the North and South series, which is like a trilogy.
Yeah.
Anyway, talking about historical memory and how we perceive, that's a good example. We'll get into that later. History and Memory is a good show. We should consider that sometime.
Yeah, I agree. And so what I think is interesting about North and South is that in comparison to Gone with the Wind, it definitely did portray a much more gritty, much more complex version of events at the time, right? And it didn't spend romanticizing too much different things, but rather dealt with the intricacies of relationships through the Civil War. And I do want to say that North and South is pretty ham-fisted about how it presents history. Like they're just like, I disagree with you, although I understand that there might be financial reasons for slavery, right? Like it's not, they don't try to justify any of it, just so you know. But they do, it feels at certain moments in the script like they're reading from a textbook, and they're like, we understand that the economy of the South is based on an agrarian model that is more difficult to, like things like that. You're just like, okay, that's an awkward moment in the script, right? But but ultimately, North and South is actually like a pretty solid series. And if anybody wants to watch, we refer to it as one of the most shitastic tellings of the Civil War. It's very overblown. It's very 80s. It's very melodramatic. Patrick Swayze stars as a general in the Confederacy with not just golden locks of long hair, but also capes. He wears a lot of capes in it. So I recommend it, not just because it's kind of a fun thing to watch, but it's also got Olivia De Havilland. Brassy, you were going to tell us a little bit about Olivia De Havilland's like life and like her like feistiness.
Right, indeed. This little 5'5" lady was not the one you messed with when it came to court. She took Warner Brothers to court and won. And it was 3 years long fight against Warner Brothers. She sued them because they kept, the upshot of it is they just didn't allow women or minorities to get a great contract written out for them. They had no support. There was nothing granted these people. And she and everyone else was doing the same work as their lead actors, but their lead actors came away with money bags.
Right.
Nothing was left over for anybody else. So she literally sued the Warner Brothers family for 3 years and won. So it was, remember back in the day, and I'm sure they still do this, an actor or actress signed a 7-year contract with different movie studios.
Right.
And you had to churn out like X amount of movies before you were done. This is the same reason Prince freaking sued Warner Brothers, because he was told he had to churn out certain amount of albums, and he just got ridiculous with it and sued. Same vibe. So Twitter is a weirdly good place to find people who have known her or have firsthand accounts of something that she's done or said that you won't find on Wikipedia and that you won't find in the history book. Someone said, without Olivia De Havilland, actors would have remained exploited pawns at the mercy of film producers. She fought Jack Warner for 3 years over an unfavorable contract and changed contract law forever.
Yeah.
Not a simple thing.
No.
And if you want to get into the court thing, I don't think we have time to go into all this, but another great thing she said of Errol, we're going to end on Errol Flynn, but Errol Flynn asked her, what do you want out of life? Which is an interesting question for a man to pose to a woman. And she said, I would like the respect for difficult work done well. That's all she wanted. It was like being a Maid Marian and being a Mrs. General blah, blah, blah. It wasn't fulfilling to her, and she knew she was being clowned. And she looked around and saw her other co-stars, and they were being clowned. And she was like, actually, I have the time. I'm going to court. The more famous but less talked about thing that she sued, she sued the makers of Feud from FX. Feud about Betty Davis.
Betty Davis.
She took all them boys, all them writers, and she sued them for not portraying her in a good light. Who's our Welsh actress? Beautiful lady. Beautiful woman. Zeta Jones. Catherine Zeta-Jones.
Oh, she played Olivia De Havilland? And
Olivia saw that in what is it? She was 101 at that point, or 102 when Feud came out. She said, "Oh, we're going to court. I saw you. That is not how it was. I'm not going to have you disrespect me." Da da da. She wasn't quite as successful suing Feud, but she kept them busy in court for a long time over that. She was just not the one you messed with. You just didn't do it. But changing contract law for performers is, I think, an amazing step up.
I mean, and it's not just that, right? Like yes, changing contract law for performers, but also like reinforcing historical views, being an honest portrayer of your moment, and like giving it your best opposite legends, and then doing it all the way up to being 104, retaining your composure, going out like
but calling it when it stinks, she would call it.
Yep. And so I'm actually, I think that's a perfect moment to go into this this clip that we're going to show. And this is Olivia De Havilland talking about.
Is that Carol Channing?
No, I don't know Carol Channing. But it's Olivia De Havilland talking about. So this is a group of actresses, and they were talking about how you have to develop a small crush on the person that you're playing opposite on. If there's a romantic attachment, you have to at least find what might I find attractive about this character and about this person opposite me. And Brass, I know that there's emotions that run deep for actors and actresses around this, but I each of these actresses went through and kind of talked a little bit about the crushes they had.
Oh.
And I want you guys to watch this and watch Dame Olivia's pearls.
Okay.
I think there's something incredibly honest, incredibly sweet about how she talks about Errol Flynn in this clip, that shows why her performances were so powerful and why audiences clamored for that dynamic over and over and over in their blockbusters. So before we get into it, any comments on stage crushes and sort of like our favorite like IRL like stage couples? Like I think about like people who have performed together that ended up together.
Oh,
like
Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
Sorry?
Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
Sure. Angelina and Brad Pitt. I think I like to think about Angelica Houston and Jack Nicholson.
Oh yeah, Prizzy's Honor.
Yeah, that it's just like sometimes the emotional connection becomes so heavy that it's almost like undeniable. Any other relationships like that you want to think about?
I got nothing.
Come on, where's your Dan? Put your romantic hat on. Stop mourning the mole. Oh yeah, before we go into this sweet thing, please regale everybody with your food disaster / vehicular disaster.
Okay, well, Friday night we were going to go to a mole restaurant out in Oak Park, which is it's like a 20-minute drive. So we're starting our trip down there. Now this is a mole restaurant that looks amazing. I want to eat the entire menu, but I was going to get the 6 mole platter, 6 different moles. 6.
Good.
And we're turning to get on the highway, and we're waiting for pedestrians to cross, and then a bicyclist jumps into the crosswalk, so we have to do that quick break, and then the guy behind us hits us.
Slammed.
So that, it knocks out our taillights, so the car's not really operable except to get home, and we missed the mole, and then I'm leaving for Colorado for the political campaign, and so I won't be back until November, and who knows if it's going to be open.
Please stay open, mole restaurant.
But I think we saved that bicyclist's life, though, because if we had gone, the car behind us, he was just going to go straight through, and he was just going to hit that guy. So, no good deed. That's my show.
I'm sorry for your mole. Oh yeah, we do need a show and tell. Sorry, I have a show and tell right here. So I wanted to bring in this book that I have here called Exploration Fawcett, and it is by Colonel P.H. Fawcett. As you can see, it's a very old-timey book. It's kind of in bad shape. But if you can take a look at this, so this is the story of Colonel Fawcett's dad, Percy Fawcett, and his quixotic search for a Amazon civilization known as the Lost City of Z.
Okay.
And basically it is a child's tome for their father, for their deceased legendary father, who died somewhere in the Amazon looking for a lost city. But yeah, my brother and I are both big fans of explorers and exploration. You guys can see kind of the pith helmet in the background there, and that whole spirit of adventure. I have been to the Explorers Club in New York and bought everything in their gift shop. And please support them because there's a lot of rich people who are members there who are right now under no financial strain. So I highly recommend that you just throw money at this organization that doesn't need it. But they have an amazing clubhouse in New York. It is absolutely stunning. Maybe one of these days. In fact, why don't we talk about potentially doing an explorers and exploration episode, and we each pick our favorite explorers, two favorite explorers, and bring them to the table, because I can already tell, I know who my two favorites are.
I do too, but one of them one of them was a group. They went together, so I'm going to do 3.
Dan's ready to go. Okay, so that's
I'm going to do Lewis and Clark.
Okay, Dan.
Okay.
All right. Okay. All right.
I'm not the one that took your mole.
Also, Dan, if you come to Los Angeles at someday, I will meet you there, and we will go to the best mole place, as we all know. Guelaguetza in Los Angeles.
Yes.
Guelaguetza in Los Angeles is the greatest mole spot in the United States. My grandmother from Mexico. During my wedding, we had our rehearsal dinner there, and my grandmother was sitting there frowning. My recently deceased grandmother, by the way, she was sitting there frowning, and I said, "What's wrong?" And she said, "I am angry because I had to come to the United States to eat the best Mexican mole I've ever eaten." And it should say something about the quality of the mole at Guelaguetza.
That place is off the hook.
Yeah, I follow their Instagram, and amazing.
And just so you guys know, like, Guelaguetza, close to my heart. Obviously, I had my rehearsal dinner there. It's a place that I took endless amounts of dates to. Like, it's a Los Angeles staple and some of the best Mexican food in LA, no question.
This place reminded me.
Oh yeah,
this place in Chicago, like, it looks like it inside. It's very much reminded me, so that's why I was so excited.
Is it called New Rebozo?
Yep.
Nice. I'm on the Yelp page.
Yeah.
We're clearly very. Well, you know what? This tells me we're ready for a historical food episode.
Yeah, we are ready for a historical.
We're ready.
You guys, before Olivia De Havilland, we were actually supposed to do historical food. But like Dan was really moody about his accident. So we couldn't get an answer from him if that was okay. So we decided Olivia De Havilland as a last minute. But next week, Explorers. So tune in, you guys, because that one's going to be wild. And then the following week, we'll all drool at these foods that made history. So for now, let's part ways by listening to this amazing story by Olivia De Havilland about her and Errol Flynn. So here we go. Actually, all right, hang on, because I gotta find the right.
He stayed out here. Yeah, and it took us 3 years to unwind it.
Here we go.
How about you, Olivia? Well, come on, Olivia. Nobody's watching. mixed feelings about hearing that. Well, I was 18, and I took one look at Errol. But I did have that deep crush, bigger than you had for Cary Grant. Much Did you drive by his house? Secret? I kept it a secret. Indeed, I did. And it's a total remarkable. Always he never. Well, that doesn't find. Because the same thing finally happened to him. And he was a lot bolder than I. He let me know it was. He didn't let me know right away. He let me know in very peculiar ways. Snakes in my pantalettes. He did. Were you sure I was love? He was sure it was love. He was sure it was love, and I didn't think it was anything of the kind. It's some Irish thing, you know. His way. Anyway, there I was. By that time, 19 by that time. We were doing the charge of the Light Brigade. Well, you were at the scene. We were all in the lake. And then I have a brown daughter's dress on. Well, it was beside that lake that this traumatic occasion occurred. And it was very hot weather. And I used to go around just in the petticoat and the hoop skirt of this Victorian costume. And because it was so hot, and one day the director said to us, "Oh, well, now you must get dressed for the scene that's coming up." So I went into this little canvas dressing room, and my pantalettes had been laid out on a cot. I picked up the pantalettes and slithered along, dead snake. Yeah. You know what I did. I let out a those hoop skirts and I rushed out and I tore into that lake, right into the middle of the lake, where I thought I might be safe. I heard in the bushes muffled laughter. And that was their own flag. He thought somehow that this message would get across to me, and you know what, this took him another year. Finally, we did meet. Yes, he'd been separated a long time. Well, I'm single. And she's blushing. We can assume it was. You know, he treated me. It was a terrible thing he did. David Nevins was living with him at the time. David called me up and he said, "Now there's a big British ball. Would you? I'd like to take you to that." And I said, "Fine." He said, "And we'll dine with Errol first." And so I said, "Oh, fine. I've never been in Errol's house." So I went over there. There was Errol, white tie at table, sitting at the head of the table. No, but it was all terribly dignified and English and lively at the same time. I thought he was simply stunning in his role as host. I still was keeping my secret. And then we get to the British Bowl. Now he's separated, but he is not divorced. And suddenly he takes my arm, and David Niven takes somebody else's arm, and I suddenly get the picture. And I thought, this is going to be a scandal. It's going to be something awful. And he had been very attentive and charming to me, and I sort of tried to avoid all those 50,000 photographers that were always with a flashlight. And then afterwards we went downstairs to the Coconut Grove. One photographer got that picture. And we danced Sweet
Right?
But them pearls were going to come clean off.
Yeah. Yeah.
That woman was in a moment.
She was in a moment. She really like you could see her visualizing it. You could see her reliving that moment. And you could also sense that genuine affinity to Errol Flynn. And she left us today at 104 years old. Rest in peace, Olivia De Havilland. What a hell of a career. What incredible movies. What incredible legacy she leaves behind.
She died in Paris.
In Paris, right? Because where else would you die? For God's sakes, anybody who can die in Paris dies in Paris, just so you guys know. Didn't Oscar Wilde die in Paris, where drinking champagne saying, I believe I'm going to have to die beyond my means?
Why is he so funny?
Yeah, well, there you go.
Yes, he also died, Paris, France, November 30th, 1900.
Yeah, there's two quotes. There's two final quotes attributed to Oscar Wilde. Evidently, he was just kind of letting them loose in case he died any moment afterwards. He wanted to make sure he had memorable quotes. One was, I believe I'm going to die beyond my means. And then the other one was either the wallpaper goes or I do.
And then he died.
So with all that being said, here's to a woman who was of that ilk and of that moment in time, Dame Olivia De Havilland. And thanks, guys. Next week, Explorers. We'll see you guys later.
Bye.
Bye, Dan, whatever you just said.